Good morning, everybody. This is our 54th session of Wandering Through the Big Book, and we're going to start, as we always do, with opening words. Welcome to this session of Wandering Through the Big Book. This is not a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. We have no group conscience, no seventh tradition, no requirement for membership. Everyone is welcome. Our primary purpose is taking an in-depth look at the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in order to deepen and strengthen our own recovery, to try to help others to do the same, and to try to become trusted servants of our fellowship. We are seeking conscious contact by trusting God, cleaning house, and helping others. And we're trying to improve that conscious contact by practicing steps 10, 11, and 12 every day, and applying the spiritual principles we are learning to the details of our ordinary day-to-day lives. We will begin this gathering with a moment of silence to reflect on why we are here. Louder than I meant. So these are some readings adapted from the Big Book, and Amy, if you do number 1.
I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Page 0, right before page 1.
Thank you. And Christina, number 2.
No attitude of holier than thou, no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective, page 18. But be quick to see where religious people are right, page 87.
Thank you. And Buck, number 3.
If you are seriously as alcoholic as we were, we believe you have but 2 alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out of your consciousness how miserable you really are, page 25. And the other is to ask your Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, page 83.
Thank you, Buck. And George, number 4.
Every day is a day that we must carry the vision of God's will for us into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are the thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the will, page 86. Just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and do as I think God would have me do, will I be enabled to experience spiritual serenity right in the midst of human calamity, page 68. Head in the clouds and feet firmly planted on the ground, page 130.
Okay, thank you, George. So I'm gonna mute everybody and we'll get going here. Okay, so this is session number 54, and it's our 3rd session on step 10. And next week, I think we'll be starting into step 11, and probably it's probably going to be at least 4 sessions, and then we'll get to step 12. So so these last 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I got to attend 3 different regular meetings of the fellowship. It was a Thursday morning meeting locally, and then a Friday night open speaker meeting, and then a book study meeting that we have on Saturdays. And I don't know what it was, just all 3 meetings were just so inspirational for me. And Amy and I were talking earlier just about the ups and downs. You know, I get moments of, I am so enthusiastic. Amy likes to introduce herself as an enthusiastic alcoholic, and I want to add grateful sometimes. You know, I'm an enthusiastic and grateful, and then other times I'm kind of flat, and it's and I don't know what I think it's just inevitable, and so I want to start with what we ended with last week, which was this thing about when God seems distant. but before that, I just want to tell you how wonderful these meetings were. One was a celebration, and the person celebrating had friends around the state. So we had a past delegate there, and it was like, I felt like the big guns, you know, of local AA. The big guns were there, and it was on We Agnostic, so that made it even better because people were talking about the God thing, and to talk about step 10. I mean, I realize how much it means to me. I'd be maybe a little scattered here till we get going, but I've always been concerned with what is my job, period. I mean, in life, as a human being, as a child, as a growing person, as a father, everything, worker, you know, that line on 68, we're playing the role that we've been assigned, and that's never been my thing. I've been trying to assign my role, trying to figure it out. So we hit step 10 and it says our next job, and now that we've got some conscious contact, now that we know that the God thing is for real, it's not a concept, it's an experience. It's an experience of intelligence and love, and if we are able to establish the conditions under which it can come into our lives, it just makes all the difference. It just makes all the difference. And I guess the next thing for me is understanding that I'm not assigning my own role. I'm asking to be led. And at least for me, having suffered with the burden of trying to figure everything out, this idea of being guided is just wonderful. And I love the notion of our next function, our next job is growing in understanding and effectiveness. And I know I'm wandering all around. This Friday night meeting was, it just was wonderful. The guy was reluctant, but he wanted to say yes. And then this format allows you to share up to 45 minutes. And he was going, I can't talk for 45 minutes. And then boom, all of a sudden he's saying, well, my time is up. And I had a lot more I wanted to say. And I guess I was feeling the real strength and power of this fellowship. Plus, when you hear somebody talk about what they were like and what happened and what they are like now. And this guy told a story of, he said, I've been angry at God for 20 years, I think he said. And he was at a low point. So, so he describes mowing his lawn on a riding mower, and he's shouting at God. He's shouting all his anger at God, to the point where his neighbor comes walking out and is looking over and like, what's going on? And but somehow at the end of it, he had a feeling of peace, serenity, whatever, I guess, felt connected. And then he said something like, I'm still talking to God. I talk to God all the time, except mostly now it's thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was just beautiful. So anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you all that, but I get moments of feeling the power of this thing, and what a radical change it brings to us as people. We've talked about it being a bait and switch program where the fellowship baits people in with the idea that, if you do this stuff, you can overcome your addiction to alcohol. and then somewhere along the line, all of a sudden we realize it's about so much more than alcohol. You know, the book keeps saying, if you're a real alcoholic, you're gonna need to have some kind of spiritual experience if you're gonna change enough to overcome your disease. And ultimately it is about change. So anyway, I just wanted to start with some follow-up on from last week, when God seems distant. And that came right after his statement of it's not about you. And I guess I want to say, well, it is about you. I mean, that's all you can do is deal with your life as it's showing up, and how you're going to live it. I love boys step 12. We were talking about it at a meeting recently that you know, we're carrying a message and we're practicing principles all the time, whether we recognize it or not. The thing we're trying to do is change the message that we're carrying and change the principles that we're practicing as we move from ego-based human reliance to this idea of God reliance. We're shifting what's important and what's not important, and how we want to demonstrate what life means to us. So at any rate, okay, it's not about you. The purpose of your life is far greater, and what that purpose is to allow my Creator to express through me. That's what Emmett Fox says several times in several different ways, that I am a means for God to express itself. And it's one of the things that way back in the third step, that third step prayer, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Here's the fundamental issue: relieve me of the bondage of self, you know, relieve me of all my obsessions, compulsions, negative habit patterns, powerlessness over me. So I can better do thy will, not so I can be happier, but so I can better do thy will. And then this thing that I'm trying to talk about, take away my difficulties, that which means my bondage of self, which means all of that stuff that we're going through, my resentment, my fear, and my remorse. Take away my difficulties, that my victory over them will demonstrate, will express your power, your love, your way of life. So I started off wanting to do this because of those moments when God seems distant. And I think one of the beauties of step 10 is that, you know, the step itself doesn't sound like much. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. But when you get into the meat of it, what it's really saying is, I'm continuing to try to be aware of how I am in this moment, not how I was before or how I'm going to be tomorrow, but in this moment. And it says, when we were wrong, I'd like to recast that and say, when I'm feeling something that I don't want to feel, for whatever reason, I know what to do about it. And what I am to do about it is boom, 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 boom. Pray at once for removal, share with somebody, make amends if called for, turn the mind to service. That's a whole way of life that is putting in front of us. So what I want to do is look at this thing in the study guide that comes from a whole different angle. It's going to be step 10, 12 pages, page 8, and it's called 7 Prayers from the Mindful Way workbook. So there is this, I guess there might be a book called The Mindful Way. And it might even be John Kabat-Zinn, I'm not sure, but John Kabat-Zinn was one of the first people that presented this Buddhist mindful way of living, and this is a workbook to go along with that. So, and I've mentioned the authors at the top of it. The Mindful Way workbook suggests an 8-week program to free yourself from depression and emotional distress. It's based on mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy of John Kabat-Zinn. The first 7 weeks include exercises, practices, and meditations to help us move from the doing mode to the being mode. So the first thing that they do is distinguish whether you are caught in the doing mode or whether you are able to live in a being mode. And remember that the fear prayer says, please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be. It doesn't say what you would have me do. And later on, it's going to say, show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. Well, that's how my higher power wants me to be. And what I'm supposed to do is right before that line when it says, we never apologize for God. Instead, we let God demonstrate through us. That's what I'm to do. Through us, his power, his love, his way of life, its power, its love, its way of life. So anyway, here's the doing mode. Automatic. It works through thinking. It focuses on the past and the future, not on the present. It tries to avoid any unpleasant experience. It needs things to be different. It's not happy with the way things are right now. It takes thoughts and ideas as real. It focuses on goals regardless of whatever else is involved. And then the being mode is deliberate and intentional rather than just being on automatic, habitual or on automatic pilot. The being mode is about experiencing all of the senses, not just the mental thinking aspect. It's being mode is being present in the moment, and it's approaching all experience. This is fabulous, with interest and curiosity. In the being mode, we accept things just as they are. We call it life on life's terms. In the being mode, we're taking a wider, more compassionate view. So what's coming next are 7 prayers. The first set has got the being mode first, which is different than our prayer for removal, because normally our removal prayers start with, please take away this, and direct me toward that, where this is putting the positive first. And I guess that when we get to step 11, we'll be talking a lot more about prayer. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, prayer is becoming the most important activity that I can do. And I'm trying to learn to do it when I'm doing something. I mean, actively doing something as opposed to just sitting still. But prayer is the whole thing, at least to me. And it's the whole way we change from the people that we are to the people that we think our Creator wants us to be. So here are 7 prayers. Number 1, I pray to live with awareness and conscious choice instead of doing on automatic pilot. 2, I pray to experience life directly through all of my senses instead of just through my thinking, through my opinions and my judgments. You know, I love the line in resentment that says, to conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. We conclude others are wrong and we stay stuck there. And the spiritual appendix is saying, There is one thing that will prevent all spiritual progress, and that one thing is contempt prior to investigation. So let's see. So I'm trying to live directly through all my. Oh, and then Silkworth, we read it. Silkworth says, "Although you came to scoff, you will remain to pray." I love that line. Number 3, I pray to be here now in this moment, rather than dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. In our language, dwelling on the past is remorse. It's feeling guilty, ashamed, remorseful about something that I've done previously. And fear, obviously, is about what's coming down the road, what's coming at me, what's in the future. So this prayer to be here now, that's a wonderful and powerful thing that gets us out of our human minds and into the moment. Number 4, I pray to approach all experience with interest instead of trying to avoid the unpleasant. It's just so natural, we are comfort seekers. And there used to be a guy around here, I think he's down south still, but he always expressed gratitude for his higher power who, how does he say it? Who comforts me when I'm disturbed and disturbs me when I'm comfortable, with the idea that, comfortable is close to complacent. I pray to allow all things to be as they are instead of needing them to be different. That's life on life's terms, I think. Trying to remember sometimes you hear people say the serenity prayer, God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the person I can, and the wisdom to know that's me. And it's the same idea, but it's just like not needing to change anybody or anything out there to feel comfortable within. I pray to, this is a big one, number 6, I pray to see my thoughts as mental events, simply as mental stuff that somehow we create inside these human brains and not as the truth. The paragraph in the middle of page 49, it's we agnostics, to me is one of the most wonderful challenges that instead of regarding myself as an intelligent agent of my creator involved in the advancement of creation, I guess I'm not sure what it says, but I choose to believe my own thinking. It's really like I have 2 choices, believe my own thinking, or as step 11 is going to say, ask God to direct my thinking. So I pray to see my thoughts as mental events rather than as necessarily true and real, believing my own thinking. Number 7, I pray to take care of myself with kindness and compassion instead of focusing on achieving goals regardless of the cost to me or others, to love instead of do. So this book was suggested to me by a psychotherapist that I was working with when I was in the middle of this negative period. And this was the hardest part. I really was caught in self-condemnation, which really means self-hatred. And I guess I've spent most of my life somehow self-condemning, self-hating, and I have seen that it makes me unable to experience others with kindness and compassion if I can't. I find they come simultaneously. Dealing with myself, when I'm more tolerant of myself, I'm more tolerant of you, and vice versa. So then this next page is going to say these same things again, but put them in a slightly different order. and with some added bells and whistles. So I'm just going to run through these. And this first one is directly related to step 10, because that step 10 says the proper use of the will is for me to be asking all day long, how can I best serve thee? I don't know about you. Maybe you can do it. I remember it in hindsight. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be asking, how can I best serve thee? But I find it will, when I'm able to remember it, it can take me from whatever the discomfort in the moment is, and somehow make it more positive. Higher power, please enable me to live with the conscious intention of asking all through the day, how can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done, rather than living under the tyranny of my very own obsessive compulsive mind. So that would be living on spiritual reliance, or having a fit spiritual condition, almost said spiritual condition. Number 2, my Creator, please enable me to experience life directly through all of my senses, including my sense of your presence, rather than through the thoughts and opinions of my human brain. Number 3, please remove my obsession with myself. And, sometimes that's helpful for me. It's just to recognize that I'm so obsessed with my own feeling state that I'm not really even available to higher power. Number 3, God, please enable me to view with a little detachment my judgmental reactions to life, to view these as mere mental occurrences rather than as binding realities. This says, I pray to not believe everything I think. Mine's becoming, I pray not to believe anything I think. I don't trust my thinking. It tells me things that wind up being not true. Number 4, please enable me to be here now, fully present in this very moment, instead of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. Number 5, my Creator, please enable me to welcome and respect all experience as an opportunity to learn and grow. That would be step 10 again, grow in understanding, the mental part of it, and effectiveness, the physical behavioral part. Enable me to learn and grow and let you demonstrate through me what you can do, rather than try to avert, reject, or deny whatever experience is presenting itself that I deem unpleasant. They talk about in this Mindful Way workbook about those are the strategies that we put in place to deal with stuff, to avert, avoid, to reject, just push back, or deny, mentally deny what's taking place. Number 6, higher power, please enable me to accept all of life exactly as it presents itself, without needing anything to be different than it already is. I pray to accept your will for me. That takes you back to page 68 in the role that I've been assigned. And if I'm wondering, well, what role have I been assigned? All I've got to do is look around as what's in my life. My role as a parent, or as a child, or as a partner, in whatever the occupation is. And I think when it's not right for us, when God does want us playing a different role, it will show up. I mean, we will be guided. Number 7, the last one. God, please enable me to respond to all of life from a higher, larger, more open point of view, and with love and compassion, rather than narrowly focused on achieving personal ego-based goals at the expense of the bigger picture. This is how can I best serve thee? So at any rate, those may or may not be helpful for you, but I wanted to go through them And you see the source there if you want to pursue that further. I've had some experience in Buddhism, and it was Zen Buddhism, and one of the biggest differences for me between a Buddhist approach, some Buddhist approaches, and what we do is this whole notion of a higher power that I can go to guide and direct my life. You don't get it so much in Buddhism, and for me, it's been absolutely critical to this work that we do. Okay, just because I'm just going through the pages as they show up in the study guide, the next one is page 10, and it's homework. And we haven't talked about this a lot, but this study guide is set up so that you could go through the book in 26 sessions, which is a half a year if you're doing it weekly. And each session has a reading assignment and some things to think about before you get to the meeting. And so I just noticed some things on this that I wanted to point out. One is that because step 10 talks about our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness, it's an interesting exercise to write a job description for your own life, what you think your job description is, not just your work life, but the rest of your life. And number 2 talks about, what do you think your job description has been? Well, this is one of the way people go at this, is to write your own obituary. And they have this term, and I was asking my wife this morning, she couldn't remember it either, but there are people that professionally write obituaries, and there's a term for this cause, and it's a Jack Dupree, comma, and then whatever, how I would be described, comma, died yesterday or whatever it was. And so this little phrase between the commas is what either I am remembered for or what I would want to be remembered for. So, if you're wondering about your job description, it's an interesting exercise to write your own obituary and see what shows up between, your name and the fact that you died recently. Father, mine, I would, above all else, I think I'd want to say a member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous for whatever. I mean, I think I feel better about that than anything else that in my whole life. And any rate, it's just an interesting way to get at what you're doing with your life. So, and just a couple other notes. Why are it's in number 3 at the end. Why are our families so good at pushing our buttons? It asks the question. And the answer is because they installed them. I always enjoyed that as a comment on how our life goes. Talks about fit spiritual condition in number 4. Number 10 talks about complacency. And just remember, part of step 10 is continue and don't get complacent. That the definition, some definitions of complacency, a feeling of smug or uncritical satisfaction with one's own efforts, but part of it is in the midst of danger, that we're satisfied with whatever we've done, but we're actually in the midst of danger. And it's really how often you hear people say, I got complacent in this fellowship. All right, so last thing we're going to talk about this morning is on pages 11 and 12. And this really is part of step 11, not so much 10, but but the step 11 study guide is 24 pages. And so I was just adding it here instead of there. And plus it's a good segue into step 11. So there is this thing called centering prayer, and centering prayer is considered a bridge between regular prayer and contemplative prayer. So for a lot of these people in the Spiritual Hall of Fame, contemplative prayer is the aim. Our prayer and meditation comes before contemplative prayer. And contemplative prayer really means communing with the presence of God right here, right now. Typically, what I've heard in AA is prayer means I'm asking, I'm putting something out there, and meditation is me listening for God's response to whatever my issue is that I'm putting out there. Centering prayer is inviting God's healing presence into our lives. And it's really, for me, the second part of step 2, because step 2 is not just that there is a power greater than my mind and greater than my body, but that this power can heal me. So that restore me to sanity is the way the step says it, but it's talking about heal me of whatever is wrong. And my mind just jumped to the 7-step prayer because I think it's such a beautiful amplification of the 3rd step prayer. My Creator, I am now willing, you should have all of me. You know, it's 3rd step prayer is, I offer myself to thee, but it's not as vigorous as I'm now ready, you should have all of me, good and bad. But then the healing part of it is, I pray that you now remove from me anything about my human personality that stands in the way, not of my serenity, but of my usefulness to you and my fellows. It really places everything on the plane of service, not on the plane of how I feel about myself and how I feel about my life. So centering prayer is like the 7-step prayer, except that you're trying to sit in the presence of this love and intelligence, asking for it to heal you. And when you find your mind engaged in thinking, you come back to what they call the sacred word. And there are some examples. It's in number 1, choose a sacred word. And they give examples. Examples are God, Father, Mother, Amen, love, peace, trust, faith, mercy, let go, let God, heal me. Yes, I mean, whatever comes up for you. But the idea is I'm trying to sit in the presence of spiritual love and wisdom, asking it to do with me what it wants to do with me, to express through me. And when I realize I'm, how do we all say it? You know, I'm going down the rabbit hole, I'm following some line of thinking, that we are to try to come back to the single, simple word to remind ourselves that we are trying to sit in this presence and allow it to heal us. So let's see. We do not change the word, that's number 5. One purpose of centering prayer is to get comfortable with the language of God, which is silence or stillness. That's not easy for us, or at least it's sure not easy for my mind. Likes to be busy, likes to be trying to solve a problem of some kind. And then they tell you this is establishing the conditions, which is going to be a big theme of step 11 that came out of the Oxford groups, that our job is establishing the conditions under which God can do God's work on us. And notice number 4 under part 2, sitting comfortably, introduce the word as gently as laying a feather upon absorbent cotton. That's how we're to treat ourselves. Emmett Fox at one point says, pray with a feather, not a sledgehammer. And it's just so true for us, because a lot of us think, you know, I got to be forceful. I got to make my mind pay attention to whatever it is. And this is saying, no, that's that we come in with gentleness. They talk about 2 periods of 20 minutes are recommended each day. And then the key is in number 3, whenever we find ourselves engaged in thinking, we're trying to return to this word. All right, and then the last thing is talking about, oh yeah, I know what I want to say. Yeah, in part 3, whenever engaged with thinking, and then I'm on number 2, and it says this: we are trying to cultivate God's friendship in this exercise of faith and hope and selfless love. So I'm just becoming a real fan of the story that they tell very briefly at the end of We Agnostics, when this guy who he got too much, he feels he's an example of an overdose of religious education as a youth. I think this is on page 56, 57 is the last page, and How It Works starts on 58, but he's really anti-God. And but then he goes through this experience that starts with, who are you to say that all these people that talk about God are making it up? You know, that they're wrong, that you're right in your skepticism about a spiritual reality referred to as God. And it says at the end of his story, so he goes through this awesome spiritual experience, and at the very end he said, for the first time he lived in conscious companionship with his creator. And I want that. I can tell you I've gotten glimmers of it, but that's what I want as much as anything in the book, to feel like I'm living in conscious companionship with the spirit of the universe. You know, we've talked about what is a fifth step promise, a promise of the 5th step. We will feel as though we are walking on the broad highway hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. So that's pretty awesome stuff. Okay, so, and then there are fruits and gifts of the spirit, but we're out of time, but an interesting way to approach these is to write to the right of fruits of the spirit, fruits of the ego. You know, if you're really considering what all this spiritual stuff, look at the fruits of ego-based selfishness versus fruits of the spirit, and the same with gifts. And I'm not sure what I guess fruits are the positive feelings we will feel, where gifts are new qualities that we will have in our lives as a result of doing this work. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm gonna, bye George. I'm gonna ring this gong, and Buck's gonna stop the recording, and we'll have some open discussion. So as always, thank you for being here, and I look forward to whatever's coming next. Whoops.